You know what really grinds my gears about professional wrestling today? It's when people sit there behind their keyboards, claiming they can predict every single move before it happens, acting like they've got some crystal ball that tells them exactly how the story's going to unfold. Those same people who swore up and down that Bron Breakker was nothing more than a corporate pet project, a second-generation superstar getting pushed because of his last name, completely missing the nuclear explosion that was about to detonate right in front of their faces at the Royal Rumble. Welcome back to WWE Frenzy, where we break down the moments that leave the wrestling world in absolute shambles, and trust me when I say this, what went down between Bron Breakker, The Vision, and Brock Lesnar wasn't just a turn, it was a complete annihilation of everything we thought we knew about loyalty in professional wrestling. I'm sitting there watching the Royal Rumble with my buddies, pizza boxes scattered everywhere, drinks getting warm because nobody wanted to miss a second of the action, and we're all riding high on the energy. The crowd is electric, the eliminations are coming fast and furious, and then The Vision's music hits. Now for those who somehow have been living under a rock, The Vision has been this mysterious faction that's been pulling strings backstage for months, orchestrating matches, controlling narratives, basically being the puppet masters of the entire roster. Bron Breakker had aligned himself with them about 3 months prior, and everyone thought it made sense. Here's this genetic powerhouse, this absolute specimen of athletic ability who has the Steiner bloodline running through his veins, teaming up with the smartest minds in the business. It seemed like a match made in heaven, the muscle meeting the brains, the perfect combination to dominate the landscape. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. The Vision members start making their way to the ring, and Bron is with them, looking focused, looking ready, looking like he's about to help his crew control the Rumble match. Everything seems normal, everything seems according to plan, and then entry number 28 happens. The lights go out, the building starts shaking, and that unmistakable music hits. Ladies and gentlemen, Brock Lesnar has entered the Royal Rumble. The Beast Incarnate, the man who has destroyed everyone in his path for over 2 decades, comes charging down that ramp like a freight train with a vendetta. My friend Marcus literally jumps off the couch, knocking over his drink, screaming at the top of his lungs because Brock wasn't even advertised for this match. The rumors had been circulating that he was negotiating a new contract, that maybe he'd show up at WrestleMania, but nobody expected him here, not now, not like this. Brock hits the ring and immediately starts tossing people out like they're training dummies. He eliminates 3 guys in under a minute, and the crowd is absolutely losing their minds. The Vision members regroup on the outside, clearly strategizing, clearly trying to figure out how to neutralize this unstoppable force, and Bron is standing in the corner, watching everything unfold. Here's where my brain started working overtime, because the camera kept cutting back to Bron's face, and there was something in his expression that felt off. Not scared, not worried, but calculating. Have you ever watched someone and just knew something was brewing beneath the surface? That's exactly what I was seeing, but I couldn't put my finger on what it meant. The Vision members start their coordinated attack on Lesnar, and it's actually working. They've got him in the corner, they're wearing him down with calculated strikes and systematic offense, and Bron finally steps in to help. He charges at Brock with a massive shoulder tackle that sends the Beast staggering backward, and the Vision is celebrating, thinking they've got this monster under control. Bron backs up, measuring Brock for another shot, the crowd is chanting, and then it happens. In one fluid motion that seemed to happen in slow motion and at lightning speed simultaneously, Bron pivots, grabs the leader of the Vision by the throat, and delivers the most devastating Steiner screwdriver I have ever witnessed in my entire life. The impact was so brutal, so vicious, so utterly ruthless that the entire arena went silent for a split second before erupting into absolute chaos. My living room exploded. I mean complete pandemonium. We're all on our feet, drinks forgotten, pizza forgotten, jaws on the floor, because what we just witnessed wasn't just a betrayal, it was a public execution. The other Vision members try to rush Bron, but he's in a zone that I can only describe as pure rage channeled into precision violence. He catches one with a massive power slam that nearly breaks the ring, another one gets launched over the top rope so hard he crashes into the barricade, and the third one, poor guy didn't even see the spear coming that folded him completely in half. All of this happened in maybe 45 seconds, but it felt like an eternity because every single move was so impactful, so definitive, so clearly stating that Bron Breakker was done being anyone's muscle, done being anyone's pawn, done playing by anyone's rules but his own. Now here's where things get even more controversial, and I know this is going to make some of you absolutely furious, but that's exactly the point. Brock Lesnar is standing there, watching this all unfold, and instead of attacking Bron, instead of taking advantage of this chaos, he's got this smirk on his face. That signature Brock Lesnar smirk that tells you he approves, that he respects what he's seeing, that he recognizes a kindred spirit when he sees one. The two of them lock eyes across the ring, and for a moment, just a brief moment, I thought maybe they were going to team up, maybe this was going to turn into some kind of alliance between generations. But Bron had other plans, plans that nobody saw coming, plans that sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling world. I remember my first time watching wrestling as a kid, seeing Stone Cold Steve Austin stun Vince McMahon, and thinking that was the coolest thing I'd ever witnessed. I remember watching Seth Rollins cash in at WrestleMania and betray the Shield, thinking that was peak wrestling storytelling. But what Bron did next somehow topped both of those moments in terms of pure shock value and intensity. He pointed at Brock, called him out to the center of the ring, and these two absolute units started circling each other like predators fighting for territory. The energy was different now. This wasn't about the vision anymore, this wasn't about alliances or factions, this was about two of the most dominant physical specimens in wrestling history establishing who the real alpha was. They lock up, and the power struggle is immediately apparent. Brock has the experience, the credentials, the legendary status, but Bron has the youth, the hunger, the desperation to prove he belongs in that same conversation. They're jockeying for position, neither giving an inch, the muscle straining, the intensity building, and then Bron does something that I still can't believe actually happened. He lifts Brock Lesnar, all 286 pounds of concentrated violence, and delivers a Frankensteiner that sends the beast flying across the ring. My friend Sarah, who barely watches wrestling and was only there because her boyfriend dragged her along, stood up and screamed, "A Frankensteiner on Brock Lesnar." Let that sink in for a moment. The same Brock Lesnar who has ragdolled giants, the same Brock Lesnar who ended The Undertaker's streak, the same Brock Lesnar who has been untouchable for most of his career, just got launched through the air like a cruiserweight. But Brock being Brock, he doesn't stay down. He pops back up, and now he's not smirking anymore, now he's furious, and that's when things escalated from intense to absolutely insane. They start trading blows in the center of the ring, heavy strikes that you can hear echoing throughout the arena, each hit sounding like a car crash, each impact making the crowd react louder and louder. Bron catches Brock with a massive clothesline that sends both of them over the top rope, crashing to the floor outside, and the referees are losing their minds trying to maintain some semblance of order because this has gone completely off script, completely out of control, completely into territory that nobody was prepared for. Here's the thing that really gets me fired up about what happened next, and why I think this moment is going to be talked about for years to come. They're brawling on the outside, security is trying to separate them, other wrestlers are trying to intervene, and Bron just keeps coming. He's got this look in his eyes that I've only seen a few times in wrestling history, that look that says he's not thinking about tomorrow, not thinking about consequences, not thinking about anything except destroying the person in front of him. He grabs a steel chair, and before anyone can stop him, he absolutely demolishes Brock with it, one shot to the back that echoes through the stadium, then another, each strike harder than the last, each impact more vicious than the previous one. The crowd is completely split at this point. Half of them are chanting for Bron, appreciating the intensity and the statement he's making, while the other half are booing because you don't do this to Brock Lesnar, you don't disrespect a legend like this, you don't cross lines that shouldn't be crossed. But that's exactly what makes this so compelling, that's exactly what makes this moment so powerful, because Bron doesn't care about those invisible lines, doesn't care about respect or tradition or paying dues, he cares about establishing himself as the most dominant force in professional wrestling, and he's willing to go through anyone, including Brock Lesnar, to make that statement. I think back to when Bron first showed up in NXT, and everyone was comparing him to his uncle Scott Steiner, to his father Rick Steiner, talking about the legacy and the pressure of carrying that name. I remember reading interviews where Bron talked about wanting to forge his own path, wanting to be known for his own accomplishments rather than just being someone's nephew or someone's son. At the time, it seemed like the standard response that every second-generation wrestler gives, the politically correct answer that doesn't ruffle any feathers. But watching him systematically dismantle both the Vision and Brock Lesnar in the same night, I realized he meant every single word of those interviews. This wasn't just a character turn, this was a declaration of independence, a statement that Bron Breakker answers to nobody, respects nobody's legacy more than he respects his own future, and is willing to burn down the entire industry to prove his point. The medical team rushes out to check on Brock, who's legitimately hurt from the chair shots, and this is where the situation gets even more complicated. In kayfabe, this is supposed to be entertainment, supposed to be controlled chaos, supposed to have boundaries that protect the performers. But Bron crossed those boundaries, went into territory that makes everyone uncomfortable, that makes the line between performance and reality blur in ways that create genuine tension. Paul Heyman is screaming at ringside, absolutely losing his mind, threatening lawsuits, threatening to end Bron's career, threatening everything under the sun because his client, his beast, his meal ticket just got humiliated in front of millions of people. My cousin Tommy, who trains at a local wrestling school and thinks he knows everything about the business, kept insisting this was all planned, that it was a work, that everything was carefully orchestrated. But I've been watching wrestling long enough to recognize when something goes beyond the script, when real emotions seep into the performance, when the stakes become genuinely personal. The way Brock looked at Bron as they were being separated, the way security struggled to actually control the situation, the way the announcers seemed genuinely shaken by what they were witnessing, all of it pointed to something more real, more raw, more dangerous than your typical wrestling angle. The Royal Rumble match had to continue, but nobody cared anymore. The rest of the participants seemed like background noise compared to what we just witnessed. Bron and Brock had both been eliminated during their brawl, both dragged to the back by separate groups of security and officials, but the damage was done. Social media immediately exploded with reactions, with hot takes, with people trying to process what they just saw. Hashtags started trending worldwide within minutes. Wrestling journalists were scrambling to get statements from WWE officials, former wrestlers were weighing in with their opinions, and the entire wrestling community was unified in one thing: we had just witnessed something that would change the trajectory of multiple careers. What makes this even more fascinating is the historical context. Brock Lesnar has been the final boss of WWE for so long that challenging him, let alone attacking him like that, seemed unthinkable. He's the guy that Vince McMahon protected, that Triple H respects, that John Cena couldn't consistently beat, that Roman Reigns needed multiple attempts to overcome. He exists in this elevated tier of professional wrestling where the normal rules don't apply, where his presence automatically makes everything feel more important, more dangerous, more real. For Bron to not just challenge that status but to actively disrespect it, to physically assault Brock in a way that felt genuinely violent rather than performative, that shifts the entire power dynamic of the company. I've been running WWE Frenzy for 3 years now, covering every major show, every significant angle, every controversial moment, and I can honestly say I've never been more excited to see where a story goes than I am right now. The questions are endless and absolutely compelling. Was this sanctioned by WWE management, or did Bron go into business for himself? Will Brock demand revenge, and if so, what form will that revenge take? How does the Vision respond to being betrayed and humiliated in such spectacular fashion? Where does Bron go from here now that he's essentially declared war on everyone? These aren't rhetorical questions designed to build hype, these are genuine mysteries that have real storytelling consequences, that could branch off in a dozen different directions, that make me want to tune in every single week to see the next chapter unfold. The beauty of what happened at the Royal Rumble is that it doesn't just affect those directly involved, it ripples out across the entire roster. Every champion now has to look over their shoulder wondering if Bron is coming for them next. Every faction has to question their own loyalty and stability. Every legend has to wonder if they're safe from this new breed of wrestler that doesn't respect the old hierarchies, doesn't care about paying dues, doesn't operate by the traditional rules of engagement. Bron essentially threw a grenade into the established order of WWE, and we're all just waiting to see what rises from the ashes. There's also something deeply personal about watching someone fully commit to a character or a moment the way Bron did that night. In an era where everything feels carefully calculated, where every move is focus tested and approved by committees, where wrestlers are increasingly aware of their brand and their image, seeing someone just go absolutely feral and commit to pure chaos feels refreshing. It feels dangerous in the best possible way, like anything could happen, like the script could be torn up at any moment, like we're watching something genuinely unpredictable unfold in real time. My girlfriend, who tolerates my wrestling obsession but doesn't really get it, walked into the room during the aftermath and asked why I was so amped up about what looked like staged fighting. I tried explaining that while yes, wrestling is predetermined, what we just witnessed felt like it transcended that, like the emotions were too real, the violence too intense, the implications too significant to dismiss as just entertainment. She still didn't fully understand, but she could see the passion in my eyes, could feel the energy in the room, could sense that something important had just occurred even if she couldn't articulate exactly what or why. That's the power of professional wrestling at its absolute best. It creates moments that resonate beyond the ring, that spark conversations, that force people to take sides, that generate genuine emotional responses even when we know it's a performance. Bron Breakker attacking Brock Lesnar wasn't just a cool spot or a shocking twist, it was a cultural moment within the wrestling community, a line of demarcation between before and after, a reference point that we'll be talking about for years to come when discussing the evolution of both men's careers. The financial implications alone are staggering to consider. Brock Lesnar commands one of the highest salaries in professional wrestling, appears on his own terms, works a limited schedule because his star power allows it. Bron attacking him the way he did potentially sets up a feud that could headline WrestleMania, that could draw massive pay-per-view buys, that could sell out stadiums because everyone wants to see the conclusion of the story. WWE management, if they're smart, is already booking venues and planning promotional campaigns around the inevitable rematch, the grudge match, the final confrontation between these two forces of nature. But beyond the money and the ratings and the business aspects, there's something primal about what we witnessed. It tapped into fundamental human emotions about power, respect, hierarchy, and rebellion. Watching a younger wrestler decisively reject the authority of an established legend, watching him physically impose his will despite the risks and consequences, watching him essentially bet everything on himself, that resonates on a deep level that transcends wrestling. It's the same energy that makes people love underdog stories, that makes rebellion narratives so compelling, that makes watching someone challenge impossible odds so satisfying even when they might fail. I keep replaying the moment in my head when Bron first grabbed the Vision's leader. The look of betrayal, of confusion, of realization that washed over his face in that split second before impact. That's the kind of detail that makes wrestling special, that separates great moments from legendary ones. The storytelling wasn't just in the big moves and the dramatic gestures, it was in those micro-expressions, those little touches of humanity that make the characters feel real and the stakes feel genuine. Security footage and backstage reports that leaked later painted an even more chaotic picture. Apparently, the locker room was in complete disarray after the incident, with different factions forming around whether Bron was justified or had crossed a line. Veterans like Randy Orton were reportedly impressed by the intensity but concerned about the precedent it sets. Younger wrestlers were energized, seeing it as proof that you can make your own opportunities rather than waiting for permission. Management was scrambling, trying to figure out how to capitalize on the moment while also maintaining some semblance of control over their roster. The entire ecosystem of WWE had been disrupted by one man's decision to stop playing by the rules. What really separates this from other heel turns or betrayals in wrestling history is the complete lack of ambiguity in Bron's actions. When Seth Rollins turned on the Shield, there was immediate justification, a corporate alliance that explained his motivations. When Roman Reigns turned heel, it was framed as him finally embracing his true nature and the fans' rejection. But Bron didn't offer explanations, didn't cut a promo justifying his actions, didn't try to make himself the sympathetic character in this narrative. He simply destroyed everyone in his path and walked away, letting his violence speak for itself. That's bold storytelling, that's confident character work, that's a performer trusting that the audience is smart enough to understand motivations without having everything spelled out for them. The Royal Rumble is supposed to be about opportunity, about earning a championship match at WrestleMania, about proving yourself against 29 other competitors. Bron Breakker turned it into something else entirely, transformed it from a competition into a statement, from a match into a moment, from a career-building opportunity into a career-defining declaration. He didn't win the Rumble in the traditional sense, but he absolutely stole the show, dominated the conversation, and positioned himself as the most talked-about wrestler in the world overnight. Looking at the broader landscape of professional wrestling right now, across all promotions and all companies, nobody is generating the kind of buzz that Bron created with this one sequence of events. AEW has great wrestlers and compelling storylines, but nothing that captures mainstream attention like this. The independent scene produces incredible matches, but lacks the platform and resources to create moments this impactful. WWE's other storylines are solid, but they feel conventional compared to the chaos that Bron unleashed. He found a way to break through the noise, to create something that feels dangerous and unpredictable, to remind everyone why wrestling can be the most electrifying form of entertainment when everything clicks into place. My prediction, and you can hold me to this, is that we're looking at the next decade's top heel. Not just a villain that people love to hate, but a genuine antagonist that makes you uncomfortable, that challenges your expectations, that forces you to question your own reactions and assumptions. The best heels in wrestling history weren't just mean or arrogant, they tapped into something deeper, something psychological, something that made their villainy feel important rather than just performative. Bron has that potential, that raw material that can be refined into something truly special if WWE handles this correctly. The comparison to Brock's own rise is inevitable and actually quite instructive. When Brock first arrived in WWE, he was also viewed as a second-generation talent, following in the footsteps of his amateur wrestling pedigree and his developmental success. He was paired with Paul Heyman, given opponents to destroy, built up systematically through a series of increasingly impressive performances. But there was always a sense of control, of corporate backing, of playing within the system even as he dominated it. Bron's approach is fundamentally different because he's rejecting that system, burning bridges rather than building them, choosing chaos over strategy. Whether that's a better path remains to be seen, but it's certainly more compelling to watch unfold. I think about the conversations happening in living rooms, bars, and group chats all over the world right now because of what Bron did. People who haven't watched wrestling in years are suddenly checking highlights and asking questions. Casual fans are becoming invested fans because they want to see what happens next. Die-hard followers are debating and analyzing every aspect of the performance. That's the kind of cultural penetration that wrestling desperately needs in an era of fragmented attention and endless entertainment options. One moment, executed perfectly, with the right intensity and stakes, can cut through everything else and remind people why they fell in love with professional wrestling in the first place. The technical execution of everything Bron did that night deserves recognition too. Wrestling at the highest level requires incredible athleticism, timing, psychology, and storytelling ability all happening simultaneously. Every move Bron hit looked devastating but was presumably executed safely enough to protect his opponents. Every facial expression registered on camera and communicated his mental state. Every decision about when to strike and when to stalk built tension and drama. This wasn't just a strong guy hitting people hard, this was a complete performer operating at an elite level and demonstrating why he deserves to be in that main event conversation. The merchandise sales following the Royal Rumble reportedly crashed WWE's website temporarily, with Bron's shirts selling out within hours. That's not just a wrestling story anymore, that's a business story, that's proof of crossover appeal, that's evidence that mainstream audiences are paying attention. WWE's stock price even got a small bump in the following days as analysts noted the social media engagement and mainstream press coverage. When your wrestling angle starts affecting Wall Street, you know you've created something significant. What keeps me coming back to this moment, what makes me want to create content about it and discuss it endlessly, is that it feels like a turning point not just for Bron but for WWE as a whole. The company has been in a transition period, trying to build new stars while honoring its legends, attempting to appeal to modern audiences while maintaining its core fan base, balancing corporate interests with creative storytelling. What Bron did at the Royal Rumble suggests a willingness to take bigger risks, to trust their performers, to create moments that feel genuinely unpredictable and dangerous. If that's the direction WWE is heading, then we're in for an incredibly exciting next few years. So here's what I want you to do right now. Drop a comment below telling me your honest reaction when Bron turned on the Vision and attacked Brock. Were you shocked? Angry? Excited? Did you see it coming or were you completely blindsided? I want to know where you stand on this because the wrestling community is divided and those conversations, those debates, those passionate disagreements are what make following this industry so rewarding. Smash that subscribe button because WWE Frenzy is going to be covering every single development in this story, every backstage report, every follow-up angle, every twist and turn as this plays out over the coming months. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any uploads because in a story this volatile, things could change at any moment and you'll want to be among the first to know. Share this video with your wrestling friends, with people who stopped watching but might be interested in jumping back in, with anyone who appreciates peak entertainment because what we witnessed at the Royal Rumble deserves to be seen and discussed by as many people as possible. The wrestling world just got turned upside down, and we're all along for the ride whether we're ready or not.